This video is about the fourth step. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Starve the Demon, Recovery by Any Means Necessary. I'm your host, Jenna, and today we're continuing with our Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book study. We're in the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Blue Book and the 12 and 12, and we are going to start talking about step 4. Don't fear the fourth step. I know you've heard a lot of things about it, some good, some bad. Forget what you've heard. We're going to go through what the literature tells us, piece by piece. It's been my experience. If I stick with the literature, find people that have what I want, which is peace, joy, and happiness, and are living by spiritual principles, and I take their advice on how to go through this, I get through it okay. Got a lot of freedom working my 4-step, and I hope that I can convey that to you, that you realize that everything that comes up in your 4-step is something that you have already survived. You've heard me say it before. This is where the healing really starts. This is where we start to unpack our baggage so we can get it out of our backpack and stop carrying it around. And once you get through that, it's so freeing. That's part of the free of living happy, joyous, and free. Not being burdened by those things. Not being weighed down by your past. We are continuing with Chapter 5, page 63. And I like to do this as if I'm speaking to a sponsee that's unfamiliar with the literature, hasn't worked the steps yet. I'm going to be reading it, telling a little bit about my story, giving instructions, and hopefully making simple what we think are complex ideas. So I hope you got your books, a highlighter, pen. I do not represent Alcoholics Anonymous. I am carrying the message of recovery. That is my 12-step work. So if anybody has anything that they would like to add to what I have to say, or any questions that you have, or if there's a way that you do it different, please leave me a comment, like the video, share it with your friends if you still have any. There's also my series Understanding the 12 Steps, whether you're working AA or NA, doesn't matter. So please check out my other videos. Not going to rehash everything right now. Let's get into it. Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action. The first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us have never attempted. So, we've already talked about vigorous honesty. Now we're talking about vigorous action. Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. Our liquor was but a symptom, so we had to get down to causes and conditions. Why do we drink? Therefore, we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. So now, if you have admitted that you're an alcoholic, you have come to believe that a higher power can restore your sanity, you have made a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God of your understanding, you are now on the 4th step. Yay! I'm on the 4th step. Yay! I really don't care what course of recovery that you're working. There comes a point where we have to face the past and be able to put it down and walk away from it. And that is what the 4 steps about. It's not about making you feel ashamed or making you feel bad. No, it's about being able to walk away from shame, walk away from feeling bad. Let's talk about this fearless and thorough personal inventory that we're asked to make. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stocks in trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods, to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business is to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. What is valuable? What is still serving you? Or why are you holding on to that thing? Whatever that thing is, everybody's got different things. We're all holding on to things that we just won't let go of. Can't let go? I don't know. Can't lives on Wall Street. You won't let it go. You're clinging to it. Some of us, and you know who you are, wallow and almost revel in victimhood. As long as I'm a victim, then it's not really my fault, and I don't have to deal with my own accountability. Pour me, pour me, pour me another drink. I don't think so. We did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. Being convinced that self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us, we considered its common manifestations. Resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease, for we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. In dealing with our resentments, we set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. The first thing that you're going to deal with are your resentments. Those things, when you think about them, you feel anger. You feel betrayed. You feel somebody did something to you. So you're not going to go across. You're going down. First, you're just going to list all the names. Any name that comes up in your mind that elicits a feeling of resentment, name goes on the list. Start with yourself and your parents because that's where your trauma originates from. You're going to sit down. You're going to give yourself an allotted amount of time, say half an hour. Now, if you go longer than half an hour, great, wonderful. The more time you spend doing it, the quicker you'll be done with it. Right? And don't expect to get all the names all at one time. That's just not how the brain works. And I thoroughly believe that we're not necessarily ready to handle everything this first go around. So there's going to be things that you don't think of. You'll be 3 years sober sitting around not doing anything. And all of a sudden somebody will pop in your head and go, oh my goodness, I forgot all about that. I got to 4-step it. But now it's different because as you're dealing with that one thing instead of the 200 things, because if you're like me, I was 45 when I did my 4-step. When I tell you that list was as long as your arm, I've never had to do another one. I've had to do individual instances of, oh, I need to 4-step that. That has happened. But also, I worked step 10, which is a continued inventory. We'll get to that later. Right now, all you have to worry about is making your list. So you're going to sit down. You're going to say, all right, for half an hour, higher power, please help me to make this list. And any name that comes up, any person, principle, or institution that pops in your head goes on that list. Don't analyze it. Don't question it. Just write it down. Remember, step 4 is not about blaming. It's about identifying where expectations collide with reality and how you reacted to that. You're going to be looking for your patterns. People are individual people who, when you think about them, it elicits a feeling of disappointment, hurt, betrayal, rejection. If they were trying to control you or you feel threatened by them, if any of those emotions come up, even if it's something that you have been telling people, oh, I'm over it. Oh, that doesn't even bother me. Oh, I'm over that. When you think about that person, if those feelings come up, you're not over it. You're over it when you can think about that person and that mess becomes part of your message and you can talk about it without screaming or crying or wanting to throw something. You'll know. So, who are we talking about? Parents, boyfriends, friends, girlfriends, aunts, uncles, your boss, judge, that lady that didn't use her turn signal. It doesn't matter. If any individual person that you feel a negative emotion about, write their name down. Institutions are systems of authority. The court system, the judicial system, child welfare, prison, school, things like that, that when you think about that, it pulls up those negative emotions. You don't have a personal relationship with an institution, but you still have expectations. And when they are not met and you feel resentment, that has to be dealt with. You have to handle that. The thing with resentment, it doesn't matter if it's a righteous resentment. And that's the problem. We will talk ourselves out of it. We'll say, oh, I shouldn't resent that person. I don't have any right resenting that person. It doesn't matter. That is irrelevant. If you resent them, you resent them. It exists whether you want it to or not. If it exists, you got to deal with it. Principles are ideas about how we think life should work. So we're talking about things like fairness, honesty, loyalty, fidelity. If you think about those things and it pulls up negative emotions, write them on the list. We're going to analyze them later. Right now, we're just working on the first column, but I fully expect you to just do the one part, stop the video, finish that. You could come back to the video. You may not get your sponsor on the phone, but the video is going to be there. I'm not your sponsor. So if your sponsor has a different way they want you to do it, do what your sponsor says. If something that I say does contradict what your sponsor told you, go run it by your sponsor. This is what worked for me. And this is how I teach it and how I show other people how to do it. But you still have to do it. You're going to be the one interpreting it. You're going to be the one analyzing it. All the sponsor's going to do is be that sounding board to bounce it off. Listen, my sponsee doesn't call me every day. Whatever. When she does call me, we have wonderful conversations and we go to church together and we sit and we work. I try to give her a shoulder to cry on, but I'm not a lawyer, not a doctor, not a therapist. Only so much I can do, but I'm a really good reader. We asked ourselves why we were angry. What is it about that person that you resent? And you don't have to write a novel. You don't have to write a full life story timeline, bullet points, pick maybe 4 or 5 things. Like if it's your mom or your dad, I mean, you could have 3 pages, right? Pick the big ones because really you're looking for your patterns. So the person and what it is you're mad about. And you do that all the way down the second column. The third column is the why. Why are you mad? And within the third column, you actually have a bunch of little columns. So you're basically, it's going to look like this. It's going to have a name. It's going to have a couple bullet points. And then you're going to be checking boxes. What did it affect? The little columns within the third column. It seems complicated, right? But it's just one thing at a time. We asked ourselves why we were angry. In most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore. We were burned out. First column who, second column what, third column why broke down into self-esteem, pocketbook, ambition, relationships, and also add fear to that. If it caused you to fear something, everything that you mark as fear, that's going to flip over to become your fears list. We'll get to that, but you'll be glad you did it in the first set instead of having to go back through every single thing and try to go, what do I fear? On our grudge list, resentments, grudges. Nothing will make you drink faster than holding a grudge. On our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Here's the who, here's the what. So the who is who we have a grudge against, and the injury is what we have the grudge about. Was our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations, which had been interfered with? We were usually as definite as this example. So we are now on page 65. The first column is who. The second column is what. And the third column is why. I'm resentful at Mr. Brown because his attention to my wife. He told my wife of my mistress. Brown may get my job at the office. So I have a resentment towards Mr. Brown. I think he likes my wife. He told my wife I have a mistress, and he's gunning for my job. How does that affect me? His attention to my wife affects my sex relations. It affects my self-esteem and causes me fear. So you're just going to 3 little boxes. Self-esteem, sex, fear. Told my wife about my mistress. Well, that certainly affected my sex relationship. It also affected my self-esteem and caused me fear. Check, check. At the end of this, you're going to see it written down on paper. It's going to be very, very clear. Brown may get my job at the office. Well, that affects my sense of security and my self-esteem and creates fear. See how we're doing that? The next one, Mrs. Jones. What's the cause? Why? What is it about Mrs. Jones? She's a nut. She snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip. So that's why I'm resenting her for those things. This affects my personal relationship and my self-esteem and creates a fear in me, right? Because it's affected his relationship with his friend and makes him feel bad about himself. And creates fear. My employer, he's unreasonable, unjust, overbearing, is my boss. Threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. That affects my self-esteem, my security, and creates a fear. My wife misunderstands and nags. She likes Mr. Brown. Wants the house put in her name. This affects my pride, my personal and sex relationships, my security, and creates a fear in me. So each of these things are going to end up on the fear list. And we can see that sex relationships are definitely affected. Personal relationships are affected. Ambition, pocketbook, sense of security, all affected by these things. We hold a resentment and it affects us mentally and emotionally. We went through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. Rigorous honesty, vigorous action. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was that this world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse, and then we were sore at ourselves. Well, now I'm mad because I'm mad. The more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived. It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. But with the alcoholic, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found that it is fatal. For when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again. And with us, to drink is to die. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. These are the things that feed the demon, and the demon will feed you alcohol to get what it needs, and it needs you to be miserable. It needs your anger. It needs your fear. We turn back to the list, for it held the key to the future. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had power to actually kill. How could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered. But how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. This was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. We asked God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, "This is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done." That is the fourth step prayer. Go over every single name on that list and say that prayer. Pray for those people. We are all sick and suffering from something. Not everybody has a program. We avoid retaliation and argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set these matters straight. That is the magic column. That is the fourth column, my part. I'm holding this resentment because this person did this thing to me and it affected me mentally and emotionally and physically in these ways. But what was my part? Was I being manipulative? Was I trying to get something? Was I being selfish? Self-seeking, self-centered? self-absorbed? Was I in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing the wrong thing with the wrong people, and something bad happened? Did I put myself in a position, in a situation where I could be taken advantage of? Where I could be thrown under the bus? Like we saw in our example. Well, my boss is going to fire me for drinking on the job and padding my expense account. So your problem's with the boss wanting to fire you for drinking on the job. No, your problem is with you drinking on the job. So after you pray over every name, the 4-step prayer, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful? God, save me from being angry. I will be done. You got 200 names on your list. You're going to say it 200 times. Don't believe me, just watch. We're now the last paragraph on page 67. Just clicking right along, right? Yeah. Except those are to be done piece by piece, working with your sponsor through the entirety of it. When you're done with your resentments, you have written them all down. You have bullet pointed the what. You have checked your boxes, what it affects. You have figured out your part in it. You have prayed over every name. Now, you go to your fears list. Notice the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mr. Jones, and the employer. So we tacked fear on that column. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did not we ourselves set the ball rolling? So this is a lot of times why people are scared of the 4-step. It can seem daunting, right? There's a lot of pieces to it. But each one is its own thing. Just like we say, just for today, I don't have to worry about being sober the rest of my life. I just got to worry about being sober today. Well, when you're working your 4-step, you don't have to worry about the entire 4-step. You just have to worry about what you're working on today. Maybe you're in the first column. Maybe it takes you 2 weeks to get all the names down. Maybe as you're going through your second column, more names are popping up. Okay, well, throw them on the first column. You'll get there. Maybe that takes you 2 weeks. Maybe it takes the 2 weeks to go through and really analyze each one of them. Maybe it takes another 2 weeks to get thorough and honest about your part in it. Now listen, sometimes your part truly was just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. We make bad decisions, especially when we're not thinking clearly. Okay, it doesn't have to be something tragic. You don't have to be a rapist and a murderer. It really can be just as simple as, you know what, I was inconsiderate. I was self-absorbed. I didn't care. I didn't care that I was late. I didn't care enough to set my alarm. I didn't care enough to make sure I had gas in the car. It can really be that simple. Viewed our fears thoroughly. There's that word again. Fearless and thorough. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. Everything that you marked fear on your resentment list starts your fears list. Once you've written them all down, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to sit down and you're going to give yourself an allotted amount of time. What am I afraid of? And anything that comes up during that time period, you write it down. And I mean, it could be snakes, spiders, leaving the door unlocked, dogs barking in the middle of the night, whatever it is that causes you to feel fear, write it down. You know, you can have a fear of snakes without having a resentment toward the snake. We asked ourselves why we had these fears. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. Perhaps there is a better way. We think so, for we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play the role He assigns. Just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us and humbly rely on Him, does He enable us to match calamity with serenity. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let Him demonstrate through us what He can do. We ask Him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what He would have us be. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. Now about sex. Here it is, what y'all all been waiting for, the sex inventory. And I know, I never did nothing. Yes, you did. We all did. Everybody did. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. All the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about sex. Hit me up in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. I'm not a singer. Forgive me right now. Now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there. But above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off the track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. Then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think we do not have enough of it or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. We want to stay out of the controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. We reviewed our own conduct over the years past. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? We got this all down on paper and looked at it. So think about that. Anything that happened to you as a child, we're not talking about that. Once you got to the age of reason, where you were making your own choices and your own decisions and doing what you chose and made a decision to do, what was your motivation and why and how were you doing it? The question is not, were you a virgin until you got married? A question is not, were you a stripper? Were you a hooker? Listen, no, there's no judgment here. We're talking about the moral compass, okay? And if you think you never did nothing, oh, no, okay, here's a couple. Did you ever, never have I ever, flirted with somebody else's boyfriend or girlfriend just to get them jealous? Never have I ever let somebody buy me drinks all night knowing I wasn't going to go home with them. Never have I ever told somebody that I loved them and cared about them just to get into their pants. You don't have to have cheated on somebody. You don't have to have raped somebody or molested somebody to have used your sexuality in a manipulative, selfish, and hurtful manner. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the sex inventory. So we got this all down on paper and looked at it. And this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? If it was selfish, mark it down. We asked God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised. Look, it's okay to have a sex life. It's okay to be sexual. Now, you have to define for yourself what that means in your life. Maybe monogamy is not your value or your ideal. Listen, that's not for me to judge, right? What I do with my husband, not for you to judge. I wouldn't want to hear it anyway. I'm a married woman. What I do with my man is my business. What you do is your business. Check your motivations. Are you hurting someone else for your own selfish gain? If that is the case, that is a problem. Now, you got to work that out between you and your higher power. You got to work that out in your own soul. Maybe you got 5 wives and 20 kids and everybody's cool and everybody loves it and wants it to be like that. Listen, if all consenting adults are on the same page and everybody's happy, whatever. When a husband cheats on a wife, it's not about the sex. It's about the betrayal, right? But if you're in an open relationship and you don't have a problem with your significant other being with other people and they don't have a problem with you being with other people and those people know that you're in this relationship, that's grown-up stuff. Y'all work that out, right? If nobody's getting hurt, nobody's being lied to, nobody's being betrayed, then it's not cheating. But that's something that adults work out amongst themselves with the other adults that they are in a relationship with. That's not for somebody else to judge or question. I certainly don't have to explain my sex life to you, and I promise you don't have to explain yours to me. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. God can and will if he is sought. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we are going to get drunk? Some people tell us so. But this is only a half-truth. It depends on us and on our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done and have the honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and will have learned our lesson. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We are not theorizing. These are the facts of our experience. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for the strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache. If we have been thorough about our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. We have listed and analyzed our resentments. We have begun to comprehend the futility and their fatality. We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies. For we look on them as sick people. We have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. If you have already made a decision and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, you have made a good beginning. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. That's it for chapter 5. We're going to talk about step 4 in the 12-12. Well, page 42, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Creation gave us instincts for a purpose. Without them, we wouldn't be complete human beings. If men and women didn't exert themselves to be secure in their persons, made no effort to harvest food or construct shelter, there would be no survival. If they didn't reproduce, the earth wouldn't be populated. If there were no social instinct, if men cared nothing for the society of one another, there would be no society. So these desires, for the sex relation, for material and emotional security, and for companionship are perfectly necessary and right, and surely God-given. Yet these instincts, so necessary for our existence, often far exceed their proper functions. Powerfully, blindly, many times subtly, they drive us, dominate us, and insist upon ruling our lives. Our desires for sex, for material and emotional security and for an important place in society often tyrannize us. When thus out of joint, man's natural desires cause him great trouble, practically all the trouble there is. No human being, however good, is exempt from these troubles. Nearly every serious emotional problem can be seen as a case of misdirected instinct. When that happens, our great natural assets, the instincts, have turned into physical and mental liabilities. Step 4 is our vigorous and painstaking effort to discover what these liabilities in each of us have been and are. Somebody called them character deflaws the other day, and I thought that was just brilliant. We want to find exactly how, when, and where our natural desires have warped us. We wish to look squarely at the unhappiness this has caused others and ourselves. By discovering what our emotional deformities are, we can move toward their correction. Without a willing and persistent effort to do this, there can be little sobriety or contentment for us. Without a searching and fearless moral inventory, most of us have found that the faith which really works in daily living is still out of reach. Before tackling the inventory problem in detail, let's have a closer look at what the basic problem is. Simple examples like the following take out a world of meaning when we think about them. Suppose a person places sex desire ahead of everything else. In such a case, this imperious urge can destroy his chances for material and emotional security, as well as his standing in the community. Another may develop such an obsession for financial security that he wants to do nothing but hoard money. Going to the extreme, he can become a miser or even a recluse who denies himself both family and friends. Nor is the quest for security always expressed in terms of money. How frequently we see a frightened human being determined to depend completely upon a stronger person for guidance and protection. This weak one, failing to meet life's responsibilities with his own resources, never grows up. Disillusionment and helplessness are his lot. In time, all his protectors either flee or die, and he is once more left alone and afraid. We have also seen men and women who go power mad, who devote themselves to attempting to rule their fellows. These people often throw to the winds every chance for legitimate security and a happy family life. Whenever a human being becomes a battleground for the instincts, there can be no peace. But that is not all of the danger. Every time a person imposes his instincts unreasonably upon others, unhappiness follows. If the pursuit of wealth tramples upon people who happen to be in the way, then anger, jealousy, and revenge are likely to be aroused. If sex runs riot, there is a similar uproar. Demands made upon other people for too much attention, protection, and love can only invite domination or revulsion in the protectors themselves. Two emotions quite as unhealthy as the demands which evoke them. When an individual's desire for prestige becomes uncontrollable, whether in the sewing circle or at the international conference table, other people suffer and often revolt. This collision of instincts can produce anything from a cold snub to a blazing revolution. In these ways, we are set in conflict not only with ourselves, but with other people who have instincts too. Alcoholics especially should be able to see that instinct run wild in themselves is the underlying cause of the destructive drinking. We have drunk to drown feelings of fear, frustration, and depression. We have drunk to escape the guilts of passions, and then have drunk again to make more passion possible. We have drunk for vainglory, that we might the more enjoy foolish dreams of pomp and power. This perverse soul sickness is not pleasant to look upon. Instincts on rampage bulk an investigation. The minute we make a serious attempt to probe them, we are liable to suffer severe reactions. If temperamentally we are on the depressive side, we are apt to be swamped with guilt and self-loathing. We wallow in this messy bog, often getting a misshapen and painful pleasure out of it. As we morbidly pursue this melancholy activity, we may sink to such a point of despair that nothing but oblivion looks possible as a solution. Here, of course, we have lost all perspective, and therefore all genuine humility. For this is pride in reverse. This is not a moral inventory at all. It is the very process by which the depressive has so often been led to the bottle and extinction. Woe is me, alack and alas, I have to wallow because I'm such a horrible person. I've done such horrible things. No. Humility means to be right-sized. You are not the greatest thing walking, I promise you. However, you're also not the worst person that's ever lived ever. We're somewhere in the middle of that. And when you are on this fact-finding, fact-facing mission, it does not serve you or anybody else to, I'm so horrible, I'm so terrible, nobody can ever forgive me. No. That's just really taking away your need for accountability. Because if you're so horrible, there's no redeeming you, then there's no reason to do anything. Yeah, no, that's not going to get it. Come correct. And who are you coming correct to? Yourself. God. That's who matters. So the alack and the alas and the woe is me and the wallowing does not serve you, does not help you, is not going to get you sober, in recovery, living happy, joyous, and free. It's just going to put off you actually taking any kind of productive action. If, however, our natural disposition is inclined to self-righteousness and grandiosity, our reaction will be just the opposite. We will be offended at AA's suggested inventory. No doubt we shall point with pride to the good lives we thought we led before the bottle cut us down. We got an excuse for everything. Well, of course I did. Yeah, I was selling crack, but I bought Little League uniforms for the neighborhood baseball team. Don't you know who I think I am? That's not going to get it either. You might as well be standing over there with a lack and a lass, because neither one of you is getting it. We shall claim that our serious character defects, if we think we have any at all, have been caused chiefly by excessive drinking. I act like this because I drink, not I drink because I act like this. Alcohol is not our problem. It's the wrong solution. If we convince ourselves that the alcohol is the problem, we're not going to fix the other stuff. This being so, we think it logically follows that sobriety, first, last, and all the time, is the only thing we need to work for. We believe that our one-time good characters will be revived the moment we quit alcohol. If we were pretty nice people all along, except for our drinking, what need is there for a moral inventory now that we're sober? We also clutch at another wonderful excuse for avoiding an inventory. Our present anxieties and troubles, we cry, are caused by the behavior of other people. People who really need a moral inventory. We firmly believe that if they'd only treat us better, we'd be all right. Therefore, we think our indignation is justified and reasonable, that our resentments are the right kind. We aren't the guilty ones, they are. At this stage of the inventory proceedings, our sponsors come to the rescue. They can do this, for they are the carriers of AA's tested experience with Step 4. They comfort the melancholy one by first showing him that his case is not strange or different, that his character defects are probably not more numerous or worse than those of anyone else in AA. This the sponsor promptly proves by talking freely and easily and without exhibitionism about his own defects, past and present. Oh, I got character defects. I'm not afraid to use them. This tends to clear away morbidity and encourage balance. As soon as he begins to be more objective, the newcomer can fearlessly, rather than fearfully, look at his own defects. The sponsors of those who feel they need no inventory are confronted with quite another problem. This is because people who are driven by pride and self unconsciously bind themselves to their liabilities. These newcomers scarcely need comforting. The problem is to help them discover a chink in the walls their ego has built, through which the light of reason can shine. First off, they can be told that the majority of AA members have suffered severely from self-justification during their drinking days. For most of us, self-justification was the maker of excuses. Excuses, of course, for drinking, and for all kinds of crazy and damaging conduct. We had made the invention of alibis a fine art. We had to drink because times were hard, or times were good. We had to drink because at home we were smothered with love, or got none at all. We had to drink because at work we were great success, or dismal failure. We had to drink because our nation had won a war, or lost a peace. And so it went ad infinitum. I had to drink because the day ended in Y. We thought conditions drove us to drink. And when we tried to correct these conditions and found that we couldn't to our entire satisfaction, our drinking went out of hand and we became alcoholics. It never occurred to us that we needed to change ourselves to meet conditions, whatever they were. But in AA, we slowly learned that something had to be done about our vengeful resentments, self-pity, and unwarranted pride. We had to see that every time we played the big shot, we turned people against us. We had to see that when we harbored grudges and planned revenge for such defeats, we were really beating ourselves with the club of anger we had intended to use on others. We learned that if we were seriously disturbed, our first need was to quiet that disturbance, regardless of who or what we thought caused it. To see how erratic emotions victimized us often took a long time. We could perceive them quickly in others, but only slowly in ourselves. First of all, we had to admit that we had many of these defects, even though such disclosures were painful and humiliating. Where other people were concerned, we had to drop the word blame from our speech and thought. This required great willingness, even to begin. But once over the first 2 or 3 high hurdles, the course ahead began to look easier, for we had started to get perspective on ourselves, which is another way of saying that we were gaining in humility. Perspective, being right-sized. Of course, the depressive and the power driver are personality extremes, types with which AA and the whole world abound. Often these personalities are just as sharply defined as the examples given, but just as often, some of them will fit more or less into both classifications. Human beings are never quite alike, so each of us, when making an inventory, will need to determine what his individual character defects are. Having found the shoes that fit, he ought to step into them and walk with new confidence that he is at last on the right track. Now let's ponder the need for a list of the more glaring personality defects all of us have in varying degrees. To those having religious training, such a list would set forth serious violations of moral principles. Some others will think of this list as defects of character. Some others will call it an index of maladjustments. Some will become quite annoyed if there is talk about immorality, let alone sin. But all of us who are in the least reasonable will agree upon one point, that there is plenty wrong with us alcoholics, about which plenty will have to be done if we are to expect sobriety, progress, and any real ability to cope in life. To avoid falling into confusion over the names these defects should be called, let's take a universally recognized list of major human failures, the 7 deadly sins: pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth. That pretty much covers everything. It is not by accident that pride heads the procession. For pride, leading to self-justification, has always spurred by conscious or unconscious fears, is the basic breeder of most human difficulties, the chief block to true progress. Pride lures us into making demands upon ourselves or upon others which cannot be met without perverting or misusing our God-given instincts. When the satisfaction of our instincts for sex, security, and society become the sole object of our lives, then pride steps in to justify our excuses. All these failings generate fear, a soul sickness in its own right. Then fear, in turn, generates more character defects. Unreasonable fear that our instincts will not be satisfied drives us to covet the possessions of others, to lust for sex and power, to become angry when our instinctive demands are threatened, and to be envious when the ambition of others seems to be realized while ours are not. We eat, drink, and grab for more of everything than we need, fearing we shall never have enough. And with genuine alarm at the prospect of work, we stay lazy. We loaf and procrastinate, or at best work grudgingly and under half steam. These fears are the termites that ceaselessly devour the foundations of whatever sort of life we try to build. So, when AA suggests a fearless moral inventory, it must seem to every newcomer that more is being asked of him than he can do. Both his pride and his fear beat him back every time he tries to look within himself. Pride says, "You need not pass this way," and fear says, "You dare not look." But the testimony of AAs who have really tried a moral inventory is that pride and fear of this sort turn out to be boogeymen, nothing else. Once we have complete willingness to take inventory and exert ourselves to do the job thoroughly, a wonderful light falls upon this foggy scene. As we persist, a brand new kind of confidence is born, and the sense of relief at finally facing ourselves is indescribable. These are the first fruits of step 4. By now, the newcomer has probably arrived at the following conclusions: that his character defects, representing instincts gone astray, have been the primary cause of his drinking and his failure at life. That unless he is now willing to work hard at the elimination of the worst of these defects, both sobriety and peace of mind will still elude him. That all the faulty foundation of his life will have to be torn out and built anew on bedrock. Now willing to commence the search for his own defects, he will ask, just how do I go about this? How do I take an inventory of myself? Since step 4 is but the beginning of a lifetime practice, it can be suggested that he first have a look at those personal flaws which are acutely troublesome and fairly obvious. Using his best judgment of what has been right and what has been wrong, he might make a rough survey of his conduct with respect to his primary instincts for sex, security, and society. Looking back over his life, he can readily get underway by consideration of questions such as these. When and how and in just what instances did my selfish pursuit of the sex relation damage other people and me? What people were hurt and how badly? Did I spoil my marriage and injure my children? Just how did I react to these situations at the time? Did I burn with a guilt that nothing could extinguish? Or did I insist that I was the pursued and not the pursuer, and thus absolve myself? How have I reacted to frustration in sexual matters? When denied, did I become vengeful or depressed? Did I take it out on other people? If there was rejection or coldness at home, did I use this as a reason for promiscuity? Also of importance for most alcoholics are the questions they must ask about their behavior respecting financial and emotional security. In these areas, fear, greed, possessiveness, and pride have too often done their worst. Start surveying his business or employment record. Almost any alcoholic can ask questions like these. In addition to my drinking problem, what character defects contributed to my financial instability? Did fear and inferiority about my fitness for my job destroy my confidence and fill me with conflict? Did I try to cover up those feelings of inadequacy by bluffing, cheating, lying, or evading responsibility? Or by griping that others failed to recognize my truly exceptional abilities? I'm sitting in a trailer park holding out for management. That's why I don't have a job. Okay. Did I overvalue myself and play the big shot? Did I have such unprincipled ambition that I double-crossed and undercut my associates? Was I extravagant? Did I recklessly borrow money, caring little whether it was repaid or not? Was I a pinch penny, refusing to support my family properly? Did I cut corners financially? What about the quick money deals, the stock market, and the races? They mean gambling. Business women in AA will naturally find that many of these questions apply to them too. But the alcoholic housewife can also make the family financially insecure. She can juggle charge accounts, manipulate the food budget, spend her afternoons gambling, and runs her husband into debt by irresponsibility, waste, and extravagance. But all alcoholics who have drunk themselves out of jobs, family, and friends will need to cross-examine themselves ruthlessly to determine how their own personality defects have thus demolished their security. The most common symptoms of emotional insecurity are worry, anger, self-pity, and depression. These stem from causes which sometimes seem to be within us and at other times come from without. To take inventory in this respect, we ought to consider carefully all personal relationships which bring continuous or recurring trouble. Friendships, family. It should be remembered that this kind of insecurity may arise in any area where instincts are threatened. Questions directed to this end might run like this. Looking at both past and present, what sex situations have caused me anxiety, bitterness, frustration, or depression? Appraising each situation fairly, can I see where I have been at fault? Did these perplexities beset me because of selfishness or unreasonable demands? Or if my disturbance was seemingly caused by the behaviors of others, why do I lack the ability to accept conditions I cannot change? These are the sort of fundamental inquiries that can disclose the source of my discomfort and indicate whether I may be able to alter my own conduct and so adjust myself serenely to self-discipline. Suppose that financial insecurity constantly arouses these same feelings. I can ask myself, to what extent have my own mistakes fed my gnawing anxieties? And if the actions of others are part of the cause, what can I do about that? If I am unable to change the present state of affairs, am I willing to take the measures necessary to shape my life to conditions as they are? Questions like these, more of which will come to mind easily in each individual case, will help turn up the root causes. But it is from our twisted relations with family, friends, and society at large that many of us have suffered the most. We have been especially stupid and stubborn about them. The primary fact that we fail to recognize is our total inability to form a true partnership with another human being. Our egomania digs two disastrous pitfalls. Either we insist upon dominating the people we know, or we depend upon them far too much. If we lean too heavily on people, they will sooner or later fail us, for they are human too, and cannot possibly meet our incessant demands. In this way, our insecurity grows and festers. When we habitually try to manipulate others to our own willful desires, they revolt and resist us heavily. Then we develop hurt feelings, a sense of persecution, and a desire to retaliate. As we redouble our efforts at control and continue to fail, our suffering becomes acute and constant. We have not once sought to be one in a family, to be a friend among friends, to be a worker among workers, to be a useful member of society. Always we tried to struggle to the top of the heap or to hide underneath it. This self-centered behavior blocked a partnership relation with any one of those about us. Of true brotherhood, we had small comprehension. Some will object to many of the questions posed because they think their own character defects have not been so glaring. To these, it can be suggested that a conscientious examination is likely to reveal the very defects the objectionable questions are concerned with. Because our surface record hasn't looked too bad, we have frequently been abashed to find that this is so, simply because we have buried these self-same defects deep down in us under thick layers of self-justification. Whatever the defects, they have finally ambushed us into alcoholism and misery. Therefore, thoroughness ought to be the watchword when taking inventory. In this connection, it is wise to write out our questions and answers. It will be an aid to clear thinking and honest appraisal. It will be the first tangible evidence of our complete willingness to move forward. Yet another reason to write your list down. It's something that you can hold in your hand. It's something that you can look at, you can touch, you can go over, you can highlight, you can get out your colored pencils, whatever you need to do to make it your own. Sometimes when we're looking at our part, it can be something as simple as, I had an unrealistic expectation. I expected things to be this way and they weren't that way, and I couldn't accept that. So now I'm angry about it. Now I have a resentment about it. I have a fear about it. And anger and resentment are generally secondary emotions. Usually the underlying thing is fear. We're afraid of something. Afraid we're not going to get something, afraid we're going to lose something. Too often in our lives, we run on fear, which is the same thing as running on fumes. You can't get anywhere like that. If you're constantly worried about what this guy's got, what that one's doing, you're not concentrating on your own life and where you could be getting. So that's it for chapter 5 of the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. Next is chapter 6, Into Action. And there we're going to start talking about steps 5 and 6. Gonna be great. Excited. I'm excited. If you like this video, if you get some kind of value out of it, that's awesome. You can visit my website, starvethedemon.com. You can buy me a coffee. If you got $1, put $1. If you don't got $1, hang out anyway. So, love everybody. Let God sort them out. And keep coming back. I'm going to keep coming back.